Hi, it's Nick Knightley, and welcome to the Step 1 video for building a successful career as a professional pilot. No matter who you are or where you live, this presentation is designed to help you get started off on any pilot job search correctly by eliminating 80% of the reasons that causes most pilots to fail to get the job that they really want. That's because during my service as a chief pilot, and through my time spent in the offices of flight departments around the world, I have seen firsthand that most pilots are unknowingly shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to making the right first impression with an employer. They just can't get past that first step. And if you don't make the right first impression, you won't get a phone call, you'll never get a chance to have an interview, and you'll certainly never get a great flying job and the salary you deserve. The problem for most pilots is that their resumes are prepared incorrectly. And it's not surprising. There is very little real information about the subject, but plenty of opinions on how a resume should look and read. It's also not surprising that this topic gets so many pilots stressed out to the point that they are willing to spend hundreds of dollars on a resume writing service. But that won't work either, because the person writing the resume for you may not even be a pilot, and most likely will be writing a traditional resume like the kind you'd see for someone in the customer service industry. But here's the thing, you can't use any of that general resume writing advice found in the numerous books and online resources because a correct pilot resume is entirely different from that of any other profession. Well, I've done extensive research on the subject of pilot resumes across the aviation industry. And through testing different formats, I know what type has gotten me some great jobs and which pilots I have called as a chief pilot because their resumes were so perfect. So this free Step 1 video on how to write a winning pilot resume is my thank you for signing on to the Dream Pilot Jobs website. It's also my congratulations to you for making the important decision to take your pilot career to the next level of success using the strategies and techniques that you're going to be learning. Today I'm going to give you everything you need to know about what works and what doesn't so that your resume is flawless before you move on to the next step. And this is the only available presentation of its kind, and it should be used as the standard for all pilots that want to make a great first impression and stand out above all that competition they have out there. Even if you think that your current resume is just fine, I guarantee you're about to learn a few things that will make it even more effective, while avoiding the common mistakes that could unknowingly be sabotaging your efforts. So sit back and take notes, pause if you need to catch up, and watch this again whenever you need to. By the end of this video, you'll be an expert at writing your own pilot resume that will get you into the yes box, which is what I call the minority of applicants that will actually be called in for an interview, and you won't need any expensive services to help you do it. Below this video, you'll find some free resume templates that I have prepared to make this a simple process. Just click the image of the resume and download the file to your computer. You'll be able to just fill in the blanks with the correct information as we go along. Okay, let's get started. Here is my pilot resume. I haven't changed it in years, and the reason for that is that it has repeatedly led to phone calls and interviews, consistent great job offers, and has helped me to build a network of high-value contacts with operators that I could call on anytime to advance my career to the next level or for help in a jam. You may think it looks pretty boring, and I'm actually kind of proud of that because it's on purpose. As you'll see, it's that lack of any fancy formatting and fluff that makes it most effective. So let's take a look at all the sections and I'll explain the correct information to fill in. I used Microsoft Word to build the free resume templates, and I highly recommend it because it works great on PCs and Macs, and it has the best functionality of all the word processors I've used. We'll talk about the correct file formats to save your resume as later, but for now, pause the video and click the link below if you don't already have Microsoft Office on your computer. Okay. First, you'll notice that my resume takes up one page. No more, no less. It should actually take someone less than 10 seconds to get an idea of who you are and what qualifications you have. And the most important information should be located on the top half of the page. It should take no more than 20 to 30 seconds to read the entire resume. To help with smooth readability, you'll notice that the text is pretty much centered on the page, with equal margins all the way around. And if you hold it at an arm's length, it should look organized and simple. No chief pilot is going to waste his time searching through a cluttered looking resume for an important detail like your flight times. If it's not easy to skim through in that 20 to 30 seconds, it will just go into the trash can. The font you use is not critical, but Times New Roman, Arial, or Calibri are good ones that seem to read fast. We'll be using some formatting like bold, capitals, and italics to help draw the eyes to certain areas, but otherwise, forget any fancy effects. As far as font sizes, they may be as large as like 24 for your name, but should be no less than 10 anywhere else. If you find yourself trying to reduce the font size in order to squeeze in more information, you actually need to reduce the amount of text because too much information is actually counterproductive. In fact, keep in mind that the purpose of your resume is to quickly outline your qualifications, not tell your life story. Effectively showing what kind of person you are and why you deserve the job will be explained later in step 2. For now, keep it simple. And this is really important. Not keeping it simple is the biggest reason that most pilots' resumes are dismissed. And more often than not, it's because they have written a traditional customer service type of resume. Let's take a look at one to see what I mean. This resume belongs to a friend of mine. She's a flight attendant. And her parents actually wrote several books on writing resumes, so there's no doubt this is professionally prepared. It looks nice enough, listing her credentials at the top where there should be. Even has her glamour shot up there. But man, is there a lot to read. I timed myself reading her resume from top to bottom, and it took 2 minutes and 21 seconds. And that's way over the 20 to 30 second rule that I mentioned for a pilot resume. If you already have a resume, go ahead and time yourself reading it and see how close to 30 seconds you get. If you're over, keep watching this video to learn how to make the right corrections. I'd also like to point out the abundance here of what I'll call resume speech. It's that wordy language that is often used to explain what is actually a simple skill and embellish it to the point that it sounds like some amazing feat of superhuman ability. Here we have some resume speech like, significantly reduced catering costs by preparing well-received meals prior to flights. In other words, she shopped. Or exceeded job functions and delighted owner and family by applying culinary skills to preparing meals at their residence during long-term trips. Meaning she cooked. And maintained interior of 3 aircraft, including cleaning, stocking, and general upkeep, both at home airport and abroad, where resources were limited. Or put more simply, she cleaned. So it took 53 words to say that she can shop, cook, and clean. Awesome. Now don't get me wrong, all that fluff works well for a traditional resume like this one. But if your pilot resume has any resume speech, it must be eliminated. For whatever reason, it just doesn't work for pilots. And if it sounds like you're trying to use fancy wording to artificially inflate your experience, your resume will not make it past the trash can. So use the KISS method and keep it simple. Think like a minimalist. Okay, let's continue. Starting with the header, you'll write your full name as written in your passport, in bold and a size or 2 larger than everything else. Follow that with your mailing address including country. Avoid using a P.O. box if possible because it may not reveal where you live, and an employer might need to know that when it comes to transporting you to them for an interview. Use your mobile phone number including country code, and make sure that it has a pleasant, professional-sounding voicemail message in case you're unavailable when they call. My phone will go straight to voicemail when I'm flying, but these days people don't always leave a message, and I might not know that they called once I land and turn my phone back on. For this reason, my voicemail message says something like this.
Hi, you've reached Nick Knightley. I'm sorry I couldn't answer right now, but your call is important to me. Please either leave a voice message or send an email to nickknightley@gmail.com, and I'll get right back to you. Have a nice day.
Use your primary email address that you check every day. And if you're still using a casual or descriptive email like italianplanestud@gmail.com, lose it. Get an email address that contains your first and last name in a format someone could remember if you had to tell them verbally. And don't use an email address provided by your company. Basically, someone should be able to call or email and get in contact with you within an hour, if not immediately. You can also see that I list my date of birth, and that's optional. Employers aren't supposed to discriminate based on your age, but we all know that it is a factor. You could be considered too old for one position or too young for another. Of course, if the job you are applying to states an age requirement, you must list it, or you'll get trash canned even if you are within the limitation. And if you have an appropriate amount of flight time for someone your age that started flying professionally in his or her 20s, listing your age could show that you will always have been dedicated to your profession. But if you started later in life, or your flight time is low for your age, just leave it off. It's no big deal. Basically, leaving your date of birth out is fine. Most employers aren't expecting it and are more concerned with your qualifications anyway. Now here's a few things not to do in the header. Don't write the word resume anywhere. If done correctly, no one will have any confusion about what it is. And don't write captain before your name. Even if you have 100,000 hours in the Concorde. I know one chief pilot in particular that immediately throws all resumes with the word captain in the name right into the trash can. It just maybe sounds a little arrogant, like you're one of these guys that thinks he's entitled to special treatment because of the seat that you occupy. And no one cares. Besides, unless you're hired, you're not the captain yet. And if you are so proud to be the captain at your current job, why are you applying anywhere else? You get the idea. Next comes the objective line. I always thought this was kind of unnecessary because it's obvious that you are looking for a job, but it seems to be the standard, so go ahead and use it. You can specify to obtain a position as a first officer, flight instructor, or skydive pilot, or whatever, if you know the title of the position you're applying to. If not, the more ambiguous flight crew member will be fine. You can also leave room for the name of the company if you are sure what it is, as in to obtain a position as a flight crew member with, Blue Sky Airways. It's a nice touch, I guess, but I've personally never needed that. Since I like to be able to hand my resume out to anyone during a random meeting, I use a general objective line that could apply to any company. If you're concerned about being too ambiguous, in the upcoming Step 2 video, I'll show you how to customize your CV so that an operator will understand that you are interested in working for them and no one else. Okay, don't use a cheesy objective line like, to obtain a challenging and rewarding position as a commercial pilot. It just sounds too novice. Next comes the qualifications section. This and your flight times are the most important elements, and they will be read first, so you don't want to lose anyone's attention by listing anything irrelevant. So this is where you will type only aviation-related certifications, your pilot's license with any limitations or privileges, and any type ratings you have goes at the top. You can also include the date of your last simulator training or recurrency check ride. Include your radio operator permit if required, and your medical with type and date of last exam. You can also include any certificated supplemental training you may have done that might be required for a job like RVSM or international operations, or any advanced ratings like Gold Seal Flight Instructor or a mechanic's license. Don't list any college degrees here, or grades that you have received on any classes or tests. That belongs below in your education line. The next section is your flight times. These should be short and sweet. You can get a feel for what is required by checking several online job posts for the positions you are interested in. You'll notice that they never require a certain amount of obscure logbook figure like complex night instrument tail dragger while receiving instruction in the last 90 days. So don't get so specific. It just makes you look a little inexperienced. If you are applying to fly a propeller-driven airplane, include total time, pilot and command, multi-engine total, multi-engine PIC or SIC, whichever is higher, cross-country, instrument, and night. That's it. Round your hours to the nearest whole number. I have found that that's sort of the sweet spot. Rounding all your times to the whole tenth or the whole hundredth makes it look like precision is not that important to you. And including decimals makes you come off as a little too meticulous. If you're a jet pilot, include total flight time, multi-engine, pilot in command, turbine powered time, and either second in command turbine or pilot in command turbine, whichever is the higher number. Then include the time in the specific type that the company you are applying to actually operates. It's also a good idea to list your time in other aircraft types made by the same manufacturer, if they are of similar size and handling characteristics. Depending on the job you're applying to, there may be a request for some other flight time, like hours flown in a certain region, or while performing a certain function like maybe air ambulance, pilot, or military, so include those times only if requested. Don't list your flight time in every aircraft you've ever flown. It's a common mistake that I always see, and interviewers love it because they get to sit there and ask you some obscure technical question about all those models, some of which you probably haven't flown in a while. So unless you are actually proficient in multiple aircraft, it's best to just list the ones you're currently flying and that you can discuss in detail. Keep in mind that most employers are only concerned about general categories, and multi-engine piston airplanes, for example, are all the same as far as insurance companies are concerned. So that's the top half of your resume. Again, it should take a prospective employer about 10 seconds to skim through and get an idea of your qualifications. If they determine from that you are a potential candidate, then they'll read on from there. And at that point, you're looking good, so only mistakes made in the bottom half can hurt your chances. So next comes your recent employment history. I say recent because it's not a list of your entire job history, just the last few positions you've held. This may be 2 to 4 in order to keep your resume down to 1 page. List the company name and address only. No phone numbers, you can give that to serious employers later. If you send out 100 resumes, you don't want that many people calling your former employers because they'll start to get annoyed and say negative things about you. List the dates of your employment, but not the reason that you left the job. They'll ask if they want to know. Then briefly explain what you did, including your role, aircraft flown, and what kind of operation it was, and maybe like where you flew. And complete sentences and resume speech, again, here are not recommended. If I see you write something like, I commanded the variants of Cessna aircraft, including the 172B, 172C, 172G, 172N, 172P, 172R, 172SP, and 172RJ, as an ambitious and dedicated captain on challenging aerial observatory and training missions, at altitudes over 2,000 feet, and airspeeds often exceeding 80 knots, including takeoffs and landings, or anything like that. I swear to God I'm going to fly over your house and drop a flaming bag of dog poop onto your car. Okay, moving on. Try to list only aviation-related employment. If you've been a pilot for a while, that shouldn't be a problem, but if not, that's fine. Just list your previous jobs in the same format. I would avoid listing your tenure as a McDonald's hamburger assembly line junior manager and cheese technician, because no one really cares. If you have a lapse in employment, don't stress it. Maybe you got furloughed or decided to try your hand at something outside of aviation for a while. You can list this period if you like, and it would be great if you could use the description area to explain something you did to stay active and involved, like maybe attending some free aviation seminars or volunteering at a local airport or whatever. But another nice solution for lapses in employment is to list that time as being a self-motivated contract pilot. A contract pilot is someone who is available to fly other people's airplanes on a part-time or temporary basis for a daily pay rate. And you can be one right now. Just build yourself a profile on findapilot.com or flycontract.com, and voila, you're a contract pilot. Hopefully you'll get a lot of phone calls for flying work, and I can show you how to make that happen later. But whether or not you're a successful contract pilot is besides the point. You can list it on your resume and probably avoid any discrimination that would result from you just appearing to be unemployed. Okay, next comes your training and education section. Try to keep these limited to aviation training you have done or colleges you have attended, with dates, general location, and degrees or certifications that you have received. And this would be the place to list any grade point averages or honor statuses that you have. Okay, at the very bottom you may have some room for some miscellaneous information about yourself. I use the title Additional Skills here. You can list skills that you have that might help you on the job, or a few things to show that you are a well-rounded individual, but be very brief. Think about maybe some non-flying duties that you can do for the companies, languages you speak, etc. I do suggest you avoid using this area as an achievement section that often is found on a traditional resume. You know, where you list awards you won for your favorite hobby that have nothing to do with the job. You know, like the time you took gold medal in your town's competitive snail racing Olympics. You might think that your personal snail racing is fascinating, but most people might think you're a weirdo. The only exception I can think of for this would be if you just happen to know that the airplane's owner is a huge snail racing fan. Then go for it, man. I mean, you'll be able to fly his airplanes and possibly marry his snail-like daughter also. Also, this is not the place to list references unless specifically asked to do so. Again, you don't want anyone who sees your resume, and I'll be showing you how to make that number in the hundreds, to be able to pick up the phone and start annoying your previous employers. Once you get serious with the company that you really want to work for, you can give them your references to call. And guess what? No one has ever called any of my references. Ever. If you do a great job in the first meeting with a chief pilot, like I'm going to be showing you how to do later, they will have no doubt that you're the right kind of pilot for the job. Now have someone proofread the whole thing for spelling, punctuation, and grammatical errors. This is very important. You'll miss errors on something that you've been staring at for too long. So you need another set of eyes to make edits. It must be flawless. One misspelling and the whole thing is basically cursed. And if you're not a native English speaker, it's especially necessary to find one to proofread your resume and make it sound English. It's fine if you write a version in your local language for submitting to a local operator, but English is the official language spoken all over the world in professional aviation, so you do need an English version of your resume, especially if you plan to work outside of your country. When a chief pilot gets a resume that kind of sounds like someone who is not a fluent English speaker, he may think there's a possibility for miscommunication, and that person may not be considered for the job. Okay, now you'll obviously want to save your file on your computer because you'll often be sending it in emails or uploading it to online application or pilot profile sites. As far as names to save your resume file as, there's no doubt about it. It needs to be first name underscore last name underscore pilot underscore resume, or dashes if you like. The big mistake that pilots often make is just saving it as the word resume. And that may be clear to you what it is on your computer, but when a chief pilot has a whole folder on his computer full of files called resume, and no way to tell which is yours, you can forget about getting a phone call on any day other than the day he received it. The next question is, what type of file is best? Well, I recommend several depending on the intended destination. For most purposes, you'll want to save your resume as a .pdf file. It's a small file, and it's accepted for most uploading purposes. Almost every computer has some kind of PDF reader, and they will all open your resume to look about the same. Plus, it can't be edited or corrupted in any way. Now, if there's a possibility that your resume may need to be translated into another language, you'll want to send them the file as a .doc, because a lot of overseas operators are using the Microsoft Word Language add-on that can translate a doc file in one click. Even the newer .docx will usually work. You might also find that it's useful to have a .txt version of your resume. This is just the raw text without any formatting at all. You'll need to copy all to a text editor like Notepad, WordPad, or TextPad, and then go through and create the line breaks as necessary to make it look right. You won't likely send this .txt version to anyone, but it will come in handy for quick copying and pasting your data into websites and application forms that don't have a feature to upload the entire thing. I've also seen some websites that sort of read your resume and populate an application form from it. But it comes out often looking all jumbled, so pasting your .txt version will fix that. I also recommend saving your resume file to a folder titled with the month and year. You should update your flight times and any information that may have changed a minimum of once a month, which is a good opportunity to send the current version to the list of contacts you'll be making. And if you keep an archive of your old resumes, it will come in handy if, God forbid, you ever lose your logbook, which happens more often than you think. By the way, read this page or click the link to it below this video for a permanent solution to any logbook issues. I absolutely swear by it. For printing your resume, you can go ahead and use regular cheap white paper. Click the link below to order some. See, I have everything for you. Unless your printer is from 1982 and says Atari on it, just print at home using black ink on the normal setting. Carry a few copies wherever you go, and give them out to people you meet at the airport. Heck, give them to people who just might know a pilot. It's amazing where your resume can end up, and how long it can take to produce a result. I have gotten phone calls from operators that somehow get a hold of my resume, and when I ask about the flight times it shows, I realize it's one that I handed out years ago. Another thing you can do with your resume is make a personal website. Now, that may sound complicated, but it's actually fairly easy and inexpensive to buy a URL like www.yourname.com and put up a one-page site that simply shows your resume as the homepage. That way you can have some professional business cards made, listing your website for employers to go to, and easily be able to download your PDF file. You may even get listed in search engines. Check out the GoDaddy.com link below to become the proud member of your own personal website today. I also recommend the same Website for Dummies book that got me started. Okay, I'd like to mention just a few important resume-related items before you move on to the Step 2 video, which is just if not more essential for your job search than this one. First, let's take a look at what I'll call your online reputation. In other words, the stuff you do online that others can see, and how the trail you leave behind might make you appear to a prospective employer. These days, for some reason, everyone is obsessed with publicly displaying their personal lives for the whole world to see on Facebook, dating, and social media sites. But more than half of your potential employers will look for you online before they call you for an interview. So even if you follow this video perfectly and your resume is flawless, you could be shooting yourself in the foot if the stuff you do online paints an unintentionally negative picture of you. You may not realize what remains public, even if you think your privacy settings are keeping unwanted eyes out. So take a minute and step into the shoes of the chief pilot of your dream job. Log out of all your memberships and erase the cookies on your computer. Now do a little investigating. Google your name. Search for yourself on Facebook. What can you learn about yourself? What images do you see? And does it all paint the picture of a mature, self-confident professional? Or do you come off like a child in an adult's body? I'm probably being critical, but some people need to hear this because they are so stuck in their own world that they actually can't see how they appear from the outside. So through the eyes of a chief pilot, this is what would kill it for me. Obviously, posting photos or comments about your drunken party adventures is a no-go. So is complaining about your current or past employer, or just being negative in general. But an even more subtle job killer are the posts made by the most frequent status updaters. You know the type. Those that think that their current location, opinions, or clever observations are just so darn interesting that they feel the need to broadcast them to the world several times a day. These days, everyone is their own biggest fascination. What these people don't realize is that the hidden message created by that kind of online behavior is that they actually have nothing more important to do with their lives, and that what they secretly really want is approval from others. And the thing is, that kind of person would be super annoying during long hours in a cockpit. So if it's possible that you're one of those people, I'll just volunteer right now to give you the wake-up call that you need. No one cares half as much about your deep thoughts as you and your mother. Anyway, the good news is that you can also use your online reputation to your advantage. What if a prospective employer looked you up and found the profile of an intelligent, mature individual that is passionate about aviation and that has his or her life together? That would be a huge benefit for you, especially because that employer would think that he found a great pilot by accident. So just knowing that employers will look you up, take some time and build a Facebook page that shows you in the best light. It could be the very thing that gets you the job. Okay, next, try making a few different versions of your resume. As I mentioned, if you write a resume in your native language, also have one available written in perfect English. You also might consider adding a small photo, if and only if you have one that looks professional, ideally in a pilot uniform or at least business attire, maybe standing by your airplane or in the cockpit. If all you have are casual photos of yourself hanging out, or poor quality ones taken with a cell phone with someone cropped out that was clearly standing next to you, or if you are not in the best of health with clear eyes and a pleasant smile, then don't bother with the photo. In fact, no photo would be better than a bad one. Get an impartial second opinion on your photo if you plan to use one. You may also need to make a few versions that are more focused for targeting different companies. If you have flight time in several models, you may have several resumes that each highlight a particular aircraft you've flown. Or you may have one resume that is more appropriate for an airline job and one that works best for a corporate or a charter company. And by all means, change the formatting, capitalization, fonts, and sizes all you like to make it feel like your own. Just remember what belongs on the top half of the page. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, you can just download and use the free template below and just fill in the blanks, and it will look a lot like the example I used in this video. And you don't have to be too concerned about it looking like every other pilot out there, because in this case only, it's okay to be basically plain and standardized. Remember, keep it simple. Your resume should just be a clean looking, quick reference page for an employer to determine who you are, where you live, and what kind of experience you have. And the truth is, your resume alone will not get you the job, because it says almost nothing about how you carry yourself, what your goals are, what you can contribute to the company, and what kind of person you might be like to hang out with on the road. And those are the things that matter most. And more often than not, a pilot will get hired based on his or her character and personality rather than the technical experience he or she has. And that's why your resume absolutely must be accompanied by a great cover letter. Written correctly, a cover letter shows through words on a page who you really are beyond your flight times. It's your cover letter that will get you the phone call, even if your qualifications are somehow lacking. But it must be written correctly, because there's a very thin line between a cover letter that makes you seem like you have the right stuff and one that makes you sound like a goofball, or worse. So that's what the upcoming Step 2 video is all about. I'm going to show you how to write a pilot cover letter like a professional, including just the right information that will make a chief pilot want to pick up the phone and call you in for an interview. I'll also let you in on one key phrase that I discovered that had me earning over $750 a day while shopping the list of prospective employers that had called me after reading my cover letter. I was interviewing them and got a chance to choose the company that I liked best. So watch your email inbox tomorrow, and I'll send you a link to the Step 2 video. By the end of tomorrow, you'll have a resume and cover letter that is fully optimized for peak effectiveness, and it will help you to stand out from the competition so that you are fully prepared for the advanced pilot career training that comes next. And by the way, if you like this video and you found it helpful at all, please feel free to share it with your pilot friends. And if you hated it, send it to your enemies. I created this free video series because I realized that good, solid career training for pilots by someone that actually understands the particulars of our industry is almost completely unavailable, as evident by all of the resumes I've seen that are prepared incorrectly. And since learning how to get a great job as a pilot is as important as learning how to fly, my mission is to help our community by getting this training into the hands of as many deserving pilots as possible. I gave this gift to you today, so please return the favor in kind by telling your pilot friends about it. Just tell them to go to www.dreampilotjobs.com/free videos. When they sign in on the home page, I'll send them the free video series too. Okay, thanks so much for watching. Your pilot resume is now flawless. In Step 2, together we're going to build you a successful pilot cover letter. Just watch your email inbox tomorrow, and I'll send you the link to the video. See you then.